Hi, good evening, folks, and welcome to this week's installment and edition of the Minority Report. I am Marlon David, your host, and we have quite a bit of a program this evening. I know many of you are waiting with bated breath because we would have started something last week and where we were assessing the THA and that kind of thing. And some interesting bits of information shared last week, and persons have been reaching out since then to, as they say, get the down low or get the advanced information. But we keep telling people we are going to be aired again this week, this Tuesday. And so we know that many of you are glued to your seat. This evening, if you are watching us, I want to encourage you to take your phone up, send a message via WhatsApp to your friends, your relatives, your co-workers, your colleagues, and so on, your community members, and tell them to log on to the Minority Report via either the Tobago Updates website or the Tobago Updates YouTube channel, or most commonly use the Tobago Updates Facebook page. And for those of you who utilize the Facebook platform, I know that you love to become embroiled in the conversation and so on that takes place on the live. And so we do encourage that. If you want to be able to WhatsApp or send a comment, a question, or so on, you can do so on 284-6597. That's 284-6597 or 356-8833. That's 356-8833. And we always welcome your calls. We always welcome your comments. One thing I want to encourage persons to do is let's always remain open-minded. Let's always remain objective, and let's respect each other's opinions. I also encourage persons to bear in mind that this is a family program as well. Many persons log on to the program in the presence of their family, or as some have said, they use it as an evening to have the family together, because it's very important as well to have the children informed as to what is taking place in Tobago and what is happening to their own benefit and so on. So it's important to have your kids informed. They're up to date with what's taking place. And as we all know, on the Minority Report, we provide information that is credible, always factual. This is not a program of small talk and perceptions and presuppositions. It is a program where we present the information to you, the public, information that is gleaned through research, information that is gleaned through, in some cases, whistleblower information that comes out of the division. But whatsoever we present and we put out there is information that is worth the listen. And so we want to thank you guys for making the Minority Report the #1 viewed program, current affairs program on the air in Tobago. And so, folks, as indicated, we are going to be continuing some discussions, quite a bit of other things that we have in store, guests joining me in studio and so on this evening. But before we do that, I'd like us to go to a break. I want to give you the chance to get your house in order, so to speak. Get on to those folks who you want to encourage and tell them, hey, the Minority Report is now on. Log in. Let's get on the program and let's participate actively in what I like to say is meaningful and constructive dialogue. So, folks, we're going to take a short break, pay some bills, stay logged on, stay locked on, and we'll be right back.
This Christmas, speed is on us. Get up to 300 megabits per second of speed with our new Link Up Plus plan. Enjoy more speed, more channels, and free streaming for less. Plus, introducing Link Up More with up to 1 gig download speed. Download, stream, video calls, share memes, and more. Get free installation when you sign up in-store or online today at discoverflow.co.
Hello guys, welcome. Come have a seat.
Oh, this is so stylish and I love the fabric. Darlings, you must tell us where you got your new furnishings.
We got them locally at Standard. They've got new chic European furniture, crafted from high quality material.
Oh, Standard?
No, it's Standard, their brand new Hive collection.
Experience luxurious European furniture at a price you will love. The Hive Collection. Now exclusively available at Standard.
Rotisserie, mouth-watering fries, salads, combos, and specials galore. Feeling for something to eat? Come and see. Our rotisserie is seasoned to the T. Kicking chicken, masala, and jerk roast. Crispy fries made from scratch. Who do you know can beat that? Or salads freshly cut and packed. When you taste it, you'll be wanting to come back. So come check us out on number 2 Robinson Street, Uptown Scarborough, Tobago. We open on Saturday nights from 7:30 to 11:30 p.m. Monday to Thursday, we're open from 10 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. and on Friday, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Contact us at 772-7443 and all social media handles at The Rotisserie Factory.
The Division of Settlements, Public Utilities and Rural Development has relocated its Crown Point office to Glen Road in Scarborough to better serve you, our clients. Our main office is located at the corner of Glen Road and Glen Road Branch number 1, the building formerly occupied by Costa. Our grant and electrical inspectorate services can be accessed at number 2 Montessori Drive in Glen Road, building 1 and 2.
And folks, we are back. This evening, I want to go right into introducing my guest in studio thus far with me. And as we would have come out of last week's program, we go into it again, starting first and foremost with the minority counselor, who is always, as I like to say, the quiet storm. Very, very composed and so on, but sometimes when you see her in full flight, lashing out in the house, and Minority Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit, welcome.
Good evening, Marilyn. Good evening to our minority leader and everyone else locked on. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Minority Report. Thank you for keeping us the number 1 show on Tobago Updates, as Marilyn would say. So, good evening. And I want to, before we get into the program, I think we have some condolences. A couple of days ago, we would have heard of the passing of former MP and former minister, Miss Marlene MacDonald. And today we had the shocking news of the death of, soca artist, Ricardo Drew. And I know this has been it has hit the
fraternity.
Soca fraternity, the entertainment fraternity. So we extend condolences to the family of the bereaved. And as well, I think we have an African
blogger. Yes.
Blogger here. and I Wadoyame.
I wouldn't attempt.
and no, it is so interesting to see, you know, your country and your island through different lens, because sometimes, you know, we take things for granted. And I would have listened to him on the station with his interview, and I have started following him, you know, on social media, and the content is really, really remarkable. He was saying that he was so happy to see that our resources from oil and gas is being used to develop our country. You know, and this is an outsider, and he was so proud of the city.
Yeah.
And he was impressed, and he spoke about our network, our road network, and how clean our country is. So looking at it from a different lens. And look, the producer is, and this is actually him in Tobago. Yeah. So it's really awesome seeing Trinidad and Tobago through different lens, because as I say, we often take things for granted, and you know, from an outsider coming in saying these things, we commend our leaders.
And Minority Council, I like how you touched on that, because so often we could get caught up in just focusing on what we don't have.
Yes.
and there are persons who seek to manipulate the public based on what the perception is that we don't have. But this is a young man, I think he's Ghanaian.
Yes, he's Ghanaian.
He's a Ghanaian blogger. And Ghana is also one of the very much developing countries around the world. But when you've seen other places and you come to Trinidad and Tobago, it is always a wow moment.
Yeah, it is.
And foreigners, persons who are not citizens of this country, always say this. I remember coming in to the Piarco International Airport with a group of foreigners who were coming in as well. And they were amazed at the standard of the airport, because one of them was saying that, you know, they've traveled throughout the Caribbean. So they are accustomed to coming out on a tarmac and walking across in the sun or the drizzle and then entering a small. They actually started taking photos. You know, and then came the announcement that our airport was rated, I think, best in this side of the region. You know, and people who visit us have a totally different idea of what we have here than many of the persons who reside here.
Correct.
You know, and it was wonderful to hear, as you said, from someone else's eyes or through their eyes, and hear his voice saying that you can see the development.
Yes.
You can see the development.
And what stood out to me is that the resources of the country was used to develop the country. And I think that stood out to him.
Yeah.
To the extent that the Prime Minister actually shared that particular video. You know, so thank you.
That is indeed commendable. And I shared a couple weeks ago an old clip I found that I think was just around COVID. The IMF released a survey, and Trinidad and Tobago was ranked 49th in the world for standard of living.
Right.
And
that must mean something.
This must mean something. And I mean, the ranking put us ahead of countries like China, I think Switzerland, for standard of living in terms of per capita. The average Trinbagonian, the standard that we possess. You know, so it's important for us to really learn to appreciate what we've been able to accomplish so far. You know, so many people try to politicize it, and that's why I use the word manipulate, because we manipulate persons' perception with words and pictures, and you know, you it's like convincing people that what we have here is nothing. But then when people come from the outside,
looking
into it, they are blown away. So it really, I mean, it was a pleasure having him here. I don't know if he has
He's still
left.
Here. He's still here because I've seen him on another program in the morning.
Okay, good,
So,
good.
yes.
So it's great to see that we can have persons of international repute speak
highly
highly of
our
what
destination.
our destination means to them. And I know definitely that he is going to carry this wherever
Most
he goes to his
definitely.
next destination.
Yeah, because I think he's off to Barbados because he returns to Trinidad and then he's off to Barbados and I think Jamaica.
Well, definitely,
Possibly Antigua.
we are definitely going to stand out because I mean I've been to those destinations and we definitely gonna stand out in his mind. You know, so yes, it really was a pleasure having. I mean, the guy has been enjoying himself.
Yes, he has immersed himself in the culture. I think he went to TPAC today, so he witnessed all the African dancing. He was on the Nylon pool. He was actually playing pan, no man's land. Yes, he was playing pan last night. I think I saw a video with that. So he did goat racing and crab racing today.
So
he has immersed himself
cultural experience.
in the culture of.
Well done, Tobago. Well done, Trinidad and Tobago. This evening, I want to say a special good night to the minority leader. He's not in studio with us, but he has definitely joined us. Always on the go, always hardworking. And for many folks, you don't understand the sacrifice and the challenge it takes to be doing so much and still be doing some more. So this evening, we want to just say good night, Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, minority leader. We know that you're logged on. So we would have had quite a lot still happening. And that's the thing, minority councillor, there is never a dull moment in Tobago with respect to politics and current affairs and that kind of thing. When you think that, okay, let's take a little sit back and look on, something also pops up. But yesterday, the minority leader hosted a press conference that you could have seen. It was like somebody who was just saying, what else? What else could I do to address this particular problem or these particular issues? And so we just want to touch a bit on it. There were two main points that were highlighted coming out of that press conference. The first one is the fact that it seems to be an exercise in futility to get this administration
to answer questions.
And
that they promised.
Something that they promised Tobago.
Greater accountability, greater transparency. And one of the ways that you achieve greater accountability and transparency is answering the questions that the people has asked in the house, the people's house.
This is, I mean, it is, and many persons probably are not aware because you would hear the minority leader speak of it, you'd hear the minority councillor speak of it. But to actually understand it, you have to be there, you have to be in the house, you have to log on to see what takes place. And so before we actually discuss that a bit, I'm going to share with you what has been happening over the last months. And I can say that this has been going on for almost 2 years. The refusal to answer certain questions and the excuses and the absenteeisms and so on. So I'll ask the director just to run that clip, the first one, so that we can have an appreciation before the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. We wish to defer 4 questions from this sitting. Questions 83 for oral answer and questions 40, 60, and 69 for written answer.
Ridiculous now. Mr. Deputy Presiding
Minority
Officer.
Leader.
Minority Leader.
This is Minority Leader. They have asked for the questions to be deferred to the next sitting. These questions will be deferred to the next sitting. You can now go on to question 93.
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, this question number...
Not 93, sorry.
Wait, question number 83 is a simple question, which is asking...
Minority Leader.
And I hope the people of Tobago understand this.
All right.
This is ridiculous.
Minority Councillor.
Is there a reason? Can we have a reason why this question is being deferred?
Member, Member.
We have a reason.
Member. Minority councillor. '96. Minority councillor.
Yeah.
Interesting. And this is one of many.
This is
Of
one.
many.
We're going to take another look at something else in a short while. But minority councillor, as I said, the minority leader is like, but what else to do here?
And because the frustration occurs because it seemed to be habitual now. And every sitting, it appears as if they have come to the sitting unprepared to answer the questions. And we have noticed this since the inception. So when the question appears to them to be difficult, we recognize that members who are supposed to respond to the questions are absent from the House. Then fast forward to this year, what we are seeing is that members are presenting themselves in the House, but are refusing to answer the questions. And what triggered yesterday's press conference is a notice from the Assembly legislature indicating that due to precedence, no questions will be put on the order paper for the December sitting. And precedence. So precedence is really something that would have happened in the past, and you're using it as a means of a decision going forward. So the minority leader would have indicated that the most recent precedent is that questions were dispensed with at the December sitting in 2022. So if you want to quote precedents, then that is a flawed
But do they understand what precedence means?
But the thing about it is, we understand, and it is this executive prerogative to make recommendations for amendments to items on the order paper. However, what we are saying is that if you are coming to us with a justification as to why there should be no questions on the order paper for the December sitting, then it ought not to be one of precedent. Because the most recent precedent is that questions were answered. So maybe you could say to the minority, well, it is a season, we want to make this sitting light, so we don't want the heaviness of the responses to the question. Because generally on the December sitting, what we deal with is greetings to the Prime Minister, the opposition leader, the members of Parliament from Tobago, etc., etc. So there's an understanding that you may want to have the sitting light, but don't come and try to give an excuse. And clearly the excuse was not researched. And clearly the excuse was inaccurate. So, and compounding that, we have a situation where questions have gone unanswered for a very long time.
Exactly.
And I have pulled up an order paper. And the sitting in October that we just had a clipping from was October 2023. And you heard the presiding officer speaking to question 80 and 81. And then we are being asked to pose question, 96 in my instance. This order paper is dated October 17th. And there are questions on this order paper, question number 40, to the Secretary, Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. And this question, the answer was due in January 2023. Yes? And this is a question for a written answer. We have another question, number 47, to the Chief Secretary. And this answer was due in February. And the nature of the questions are one that is dealing with the day-to-day operations of the Assembly. and the divisions to which the secretaries are posed. So the question to the secretary in the Division of Infrastructure is basically about the new projects planned to be executed by the division as announced by the Chief Secretary in September 8, 2022 in relation to the Dutchford Smithfield Road, the Roxborough, a description of the procurement process, a list of the contractors, and a list of the preferred pre-qualified contractors. Some of these projects have been completed, like the Smithfield Connector Road. The Lamy Road is in progress, and they are now working on that other quote-unquote emergency works. So why is it you can't produce the questions, the answers to this question? And this is due since January 2023. We are at the end of 2023.
Minority Council, I don't know if persons are beginning now to understand and to grasp the severity of this particular issue. And this speaks to an administration that is bent on keeping the public out of the affairs of Tobago. Because why this is 12 months you're talking about that a question is outstanding.
Question to the Chief Secretary, question number 47, another question for written response. The Chief Secretary, and I this is not the first, nor the second, nor the third time that I would have brought this up, but the Chief Secretary in the reallocation last year, which is October, would have promised to provide details of information relevant to the reallocation.
12 months later.
Has not been answered. Another written question from the minority leader, again to the Chief Secretary. The Chief Secretary made a commitment to provide the House with detailed information relevant to the recusal of members.
Yes.
So this was a follow-up. So the minority leader and the minority and Tobago wanted to find out the name of each member of the Executive Council who were required to recuse, the date of the recusal, and the relevant conflict. This one was due, the answer to this question was due on February 2023, the 23rd. No response. Other questions due for response, April 27, 2023, again to the Secretary of Infrastructure. A list of every project under the Community Infrastructure Development Program. And this is a program that was established under the past administration to engage community projects in the various electoral districts using persons in the community. I think the cost or the value of the project should have been 250 and under. So what we are asking now, under this regime, under this said program, you may have renamed it something else. What are the projects? What are the list of projects, including the value and the contract, and who you would have issued the contracts to? This one was due April 27, 2023. And I could go on and on and on. And the order paper is filled of questions that have not been answered. Answer due May 25th, another question to the Secretary of Infrastructure. And the Secretary of Infrastructure seemed to be the usual suspect
main
for
culprit.
Not responding to questions.
And I mean, for folks who think that, okay, this is just about Trevor James and Farley Augustine, I want the director to line up the next clip so that we can broaden the conversation a bit.
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 86 to the Secretary, Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Councillor Tashia Burris.
Councillor Burris.
Madam Presiding Officer, I received a notice of question 85 and 86 3 days ago. So at this time, I'm not in a position to provide a response, so I'm also requesting a deferral for this question, and the 1-week timeline is sufficient.
I would say this. I am beginning to become extremely disappointed. I believe you all are provided enough staff, enough time to respond to questions. One week through my office, Minority Councillor, your answer would be submitted to you. Any follow-up questions?
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer. Like you, I join in expressing my disappointment because, Madam Presiding Officer, this is a follow-up to a question that was previously asked about the CEO of the Tobago Tourism Agency. And I am quite disappointed, to say the least, that the Secretary is unable to tell Tobagonians, tell this House, if somebody has been engaged
1 week
in the position, Madam Presiding Officer.
1 week, Minority
This
Councillor.
is unacceptable, Madam Presiding Officer.
1 week, Minority Councillor.
So this is yet another secretary of a division in fine style, and as we've grown accustomed to seeing this administration operate, stand and first of all try to bring the presiding officer's office into disrepute by saying she only received the question 3 days ago. How much in advance are these questions submitted?
Based on the standing order, we are required to submit the questions 21 days in advance.
21 days.
21 days in advance.
So it's important for members of the public to understand that, because some persons, sometimes people tend to say,
yes,
oh gosh,
so
give them a little chance now.
Sufficient time
21 days in advance.
And how do you justify not answering a question as simple as, has a CEO been engaged at one of the companies under your division?
And added to that, you all had indicated in a prior question and response segment, this said secretary had indicated that by the end of May
of 2023,
she would make that announcement.
No, the response or the question earlier in the year was whether or not a CEO was engaged. And what is the process for the engagement, and to give a timeline by which a new CEO was engaged. And in a nutshell, the response was that the board would have gone through a process, they would have taken it to executive council, and by May, somebody should be onboarded.
Okay.
At this time, I think it was September. Or October. And we recognize that there is no CEO several months after. So we have come back to ask, what is the situation with the engagement and the onboarding of a CEO at the Tobago Tourism Agency? And to me, if we are saying that tourism is one of the most important sectors in the economy of the island of Tobago, to me, you should see this as important in having a priority, as you would say, in having someone to lead an organization that is considered to be one of the important organizations in the sector. To manage product development, to manage destination marketing, to manage that aspect of tourism on the island. And if it is that you have not yet engaged us, and we are saying, yes, things could happen. And there can be reasons why this person wasn't onboarded. But respond. Be transparent as you promised to be. Be accountable as you promised to be. We are required to file the questions 21 days in advance. And if we don't comply with that, the question is deferred. Or it's put on the order paper the subsequent month or the following month.
Correct. So I want the public to understand that.
So there's sufficient time to adequately respond to the questions posed.
There is no sitting where questions that you see the secretaries responding to or not responding to, that those questions are ever rushed. They're not brought in just before the sitting.
No.
Questions are submitted as according to standing orders 21 days in advance. So I want you all to have that as in perspective. Every time you see an assemblyman, a secretary, the chief secretary stand and ask for a question to be deferred, they have had the question for 21 days. So to defer a question borders on disrespect to Tobago, disrespect to the House, disrespect even to the presiding officer. And you mentioned one of the questions you had pointed out with the recusals.
Yes.
And for persons who are listening, a recusal simply means that I take myself away from the process because there is a conflict of interest
between me and whatever decision is about to be made.
So I have, as we like to say in local terms, cocoa in the sun. So I say, listen, I am not going to sit in exec council because this person that is being considered for this position and I are close friends. So I'm going to recuse myself from the decision-making process so that I don't have any influence over it.
Yeah.
So let us hear very quickly what the chief secretary said when the minority leader asked him this question and what he promised. Mr. Director?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question to the Honorable Chief Secretary. Question 1.
Chief Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Yes, the Executive Council practices recusals, and yes, on many occasions there have been recusals.
Minority Leader.
Madam Presiding Officer, through you, can the Chief Secretary provide us the specific instances of recusal, who, and the issues specific?
Madam Presiding Officer, there have been many, and I did not walk prepared to present all instances.
Minority Leader.
Madam Presiding Officer, through you, can the Chief Secretary provide an undertaking to this House that such would be provided?
Written?
This written, the specifics of the instances of who and the issues thereof.
Yes. So we would have seen that the Chief Secretary in that clip made a commitment. And if you look at this time stamp on that sitting, that was December 2022. So the Chief Secretary did not provide the information. So the minority leader would have posed a written question. And to this day, said question remains unanswered. And this is one of the questions that the answer is due, or the answer was due, on February 2023, the 23rd. Yes? A name of each member of the Executive Council who was required to be recused, the date, and an outline of the agenda item that required the recusal, and the relevant conflict of interest that required that recusal from the respective deliberations or discussions on the agenda. And this is a normal part of governance. This is a normal part of meetings, because generally when you go to particularly a board meeting and of course executive council meetings, there may be issues that may be in conflict with members present. So I remember sitting on boards, and one of the first items on the agenda was conflict of interest. And based on the agenda, members go around the table and you had to declare whether or not you had a conflict of interest based on the agenda that is presented at that meeting.
Yeah.
And even as the meeting went along and the discussions unfolded, as a member, you had to declare your interest if there's a conflict and recuse yourself from the decision-making process. So that is nothing new.
Basic practice, proper governance. Oh, Lord. So folks, this was, and as minority councillor would have indicated, the press conference was triggered by the email that came on Friday, which was now saying, and I want you, we're spending time on this because we want you to understand and to get how serious this is, which was saying that the questions that they are asking or recommending or moving, that no questions be answered for the sitting in December. Questions which are outstanding, as you would have heard and seen for yourself with your own eyes, like some people, since last year. December, October, November 2022, and keep coming up. And that is it. Minority Councillor, every month on the order paper, the outstanding questions are there.
And the outstanding questions are more than the new questions. And we continue to ask questions.
So the order paper keep getting thicker and thicker and thicker all year. And now to the end of the year, which is when you would think most people like to do your cleanup. If you have backlog of work and so on, you want to be able to clear these things up so that you go into the new year fresh. Now that we've gotten to this place, these persons are asking to not answer questions. The same thing they've been doing all year.
So it is coming across as a deliberate attempt to not be accountable, to not be transparent, to stifle and stymie the work of the minority, so to speak. And not only are they not answering written questions, they are also not answering oral questions.
Oral questions.
Because there was the sitting in October. Before we went on the recess, a question was posed to the Secretary, again the Secretary of Infrastructure, in relation to the Spell Board, the Study Park Enterprise Limited Board. When the question was posed first, the said secretary pretended to not understand what board we were speaking of, so he could not respond appropriately. The question was refiled in keeping with the standing order 21 days and resubmitted. It then reappeared on the order paper. The secretary did not respond. Who are the members of the board of the Studley Park Enterprise Limited? To this time, the secretary has refused to answer the question. And if you recognize in the first clip,
just to list some names,
the presiding officer would have expressed her disappointment and would have asked that the secretary respond to the question at the next sitting, which would have been the October sitting. We are in December. The secretary came in October after he would have agreed with the instructions. So he has deliberately defied the instructions of the presiding officer to respond, and then come in the October sitting and ask for a deferral. What in the names of the board of the Study Park Enterprise Limited that you are unable to stand? And then the secretary could come and call out all the members of the board of the transport company or some transport entity in Trinidad. But you can't name the boards or the members of the boards under your ambit.
They're not doing any work. They're minding everybody else's business and
why can't
taking care of themselves. So folks, this is what we are faced with. Persons who refuse to respond to questions. And mind you, the questions that are asked are on behalf of Tobago.
Of course.
And I can't recall any particular sitting in the past, under the past administration, the previous administration, where these same individuals, some of these individuals who sat in opposition and posed questions, and every single time a question was posed, it was responded to. So then what is the issue now? What is the problem? Even with the chief secretary, who had so much to say when he was in opposition, several questions. He of himself is now sitting, and if you notice in the clip, he said his response to the minority leader, he said, yes, there have been many instances of recusals. So I can't remember all. But if there are so many...
And he made a commitment to provide the information.
And ended by making a commitment, and this was in December. What Mr. Chief Secretary is so difficult to present a simple document that you have committed to, to provide Tobago with the responses. Is there something to hide?
And that's the question. So when you refuse to answer deliberately, it appears to, then it begs the question, what is there to hide?
What are you all hiding?
Why are you not answering the question?
Yes.
Is there something in the mortar more than the person? Is there something that you don't want Tobagonians, you don't want the public to know? But why?
So whilst we are still, having that information, difficult to digest as it may be, but we're getting a clearer picture as to the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency, and the disrespect that this administration poses to all of Tobago. The second issue, which I think is even worse, that triggered the press conference, and the minority leader would have spoken to it extensively, is that we saw an article surface where the Civil Aviation Authority is now saying, and I'm using saying and not claiming because it's coming from them.
Yes.
They are saying that they have absolutely no information about another airline that conversation has been bandied about Tobago and Boston and so on, but they have no information of any other airline even being engaged to service Trinidad and Tobago, the domestic route and so on. I don't know if the director, he has something that you could pull up, the article. There we have him.
CAA unaware of THA plans for new airline.
But what is this?
I don't know. And based on the clip, I think it was stating that based on conversations that the Chief Secretary may have been having in the public domain and his interviews, it appears as if the Chief Secretary would have made a comment that they are looking at engaging or having external airline come on board to service international and the domestic market. And the minority leader in the press conference yesterday made some valid points, and the Civil Aviation Authority is quite within its jurisdiction to express its concern. Because at the end of the day, if you are engaging an external airline to come here, we are still Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
And the Civil Aviation Authority is responsible for those matters.
Trinidad
so
and
you
Tobago.
would think that by mere following the law, that you would want to engage them. Also, the Airport Authority, what is the role of the Airport Authority in all these discussions?
Process.
And it's not the first time that Tobago as an island or the THA would have engaged, because we had the Sunwing coming, we had all these, and those engagements, but they were with the involvement of all the parties sitting at the table negotiating.
Yes.
And coming to a decision. So we are all at the same place. We understand what is taking place. But
minority councillor, and we see a pattern here. One of the things that we observe is that this administration, in efforts to always cloak their incompetence, their inefficiencies, their lack of performance, their even lack of understanding of the basic job of policy development, they always refer to a fight with Trinidad.
Yes.
They start a fight.
Trinidad not giving them. And we understand
not supporting.
That under the 5th schedule, Tobago has autonomy and responsibility for certain things. But it is within a context. We are still a part of a country that is Trinidad and Tobago that is governed by laws.
Yeah.
And there are certain laws, for example, the EMA Act that governs Trinidad and Tobago, that Tobago must abide by.
Yeah.
So when you come to the House and indicate that the EMA, the Tobago House of Assembly, is not subject to the EMA because of Section 25 of the THA Act, then clearly you have a flawed concept about the authority and the governance of the Tobago House of Assembly in keeping with
national laws.
Yeah. And then we saw where the EMA exercised its authority by taking the THA to court. And we have seen where the THA has now had to comply and applied for its CEC.
Yeah.
Similarly, and this is not the first instance in the recent past where the Civil Aviation Authority would have had to engage in some investigation, because we saw where recently this private charter came here.
Unauthorized. Yes.
And we are seeing now where the THA is entering into discussions and seem to be excluding the relevant authorities.
But Minority Councillor, it seems like every time the THA, or let me say the independents, these group of persons want to make decisions that contravene law, they then come up with a strategy for Tobago to have its own body for whatever it is they want to put forward. We saw with Tongue and Country.
Yes.
They came to the house with that.
And that was one of the first legislation, one of the first motions, that they came to the house with. And one of the points in the debate of the minority is, again, we are consistent. You have to act within the ambits of the law. And the thing about it is, there is a current legislation. It is not fully proclaimed, but that will take into account Tongue and Country planning in Tobago.
Yeah. Work on that. Not try to develop something totally separate and apart.
Communicate, collaborate with the ministry, see what could be done to further the discussion, to have this thing fully proclaimed, because there are a number of things that must be put in place. I think there has to be a plan, an overarching plan, in terms of spatial plan for the island.
Yeah.
So there are a number of things that must be implemented before the full reenactment.
Yeah.
So how can we work on implementing those things? And it appears as if because there's a lack of planning, we don't go through the full processes.
Exactly.
We don't seem to understand what is required for what we want to do. So you want to build a road, and if the road exceeds this length, it means that you need EMA approval, and you have to have the required documentation to get EMA approval.
Exactly.
So you go, you get a CEC certificate, and then you proceed with your... You want to build a stage in the sea, you also need to have approvals.
Is it a question of not knowing or not having the capacity? Because competence is clearly an issue with this administration. We've been seeing it from time to time. I don't even think, even with the Chief Secretary going around in town meetings and bandying the conversation only in behind those meetings about autonomy. But if you listen to even the members that sit with him, his very colleagues, I don't even think that any one of them have a clear understanding of what the autonomy means to them.
And you are right, because when you listen to them, each of them, when they speak, they seem to have a different concept about what autonomy should be and what autonomy should like. But it's unfortunate and it's sad, because there was so much consultation over such a long period in time before any drafting of the legislation occurred. And I think people would have expressed what their meaning of autonomy was. And I'm thinking, if you want to disagree with that, then you may need to resume consultation. It may not be as wide and extensive, but you need to get an updated view from the people, because it's not about you, and it's not about what you want, but this autonomy is for the people of Tobago. So if people have changed their minds over the years about what they consider autonomy to be and what they want as autonomy or internal self-governments, then you need to go back to the people and let the people tell you what they want.
Yes. Minority Councillor, something popped into my mind while you were speaking there. And I'll ask this question just before we go to the break, because I want to tease the minds of our listeners. In that whole autonomy consultative process, have you ever wondered how many members of this present administration was actually present and involved and participated in any of those? Folks, we're going to take a short break, pay some bills, and we're going to be right back.
Everybody only worrying. Never ever worry. Don't mind how things looking hard. I tell them never ever worry. If your nice can't get damaged bad. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider Tatil is always right here for you. I tell them never ever worry. Don't mind if life make you sad. I tell them never ever worry. If your house get flooded out real bad. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider Tatil is always right here for you. I tell them never ever worry. If sickness catch you off guard. I tell them never ever worry. If times fall on you real hard. I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider Tatil will always be here for you.
Never worry about a thing. Tatil, where people are people. You know what I mean.
Christmas we celebrating, cause B-Mobile they coming with rating. So brace yourself for plenty prices, cause this season will be done nice. It's the most deals and the most vibes and the most cars and the most price, the most giveaways, the most parang. Having a Christmas season with B-Mobile. I want a Christmas season with B-Mobile. Bring me sorry, let me toast to a Merry Christmas. Having a Christmas season with B-Mobile.
Top up, buy a plan, sign up or pay your bills. Enjoy the best Trinbago Christmas. B-Mobile. Life is on.
But this place is boring enough. We don't even do nothing. Let me go somewhere now.
I really want some new things, yes? Oof. Then look no further. Portmore is the place for you.
Oh, really?
Yes, you can have anything that your heart desires. Take a look for yourselves. A world of endless opportunities. Feeling hungry? Go get something to eat. Books and stationeries, games, and much more. Portmore, the island's beat.
Mount Pleasant Credit Union Back to School Loan Promotion. Loans up to $15,000. Requirements: job letter and a payslip no more than 1 month old. Utility bill, copy of book list, salary deduction.
Rotisserie, mouth-watering fries, salads, combos, and specials galore. Feeling for something to eat? Come and see. Our rotisserie is seasoned to the T. Kicking chicken, masala, and jerk roast. Crispy fries made from scratch. Who do you know can beat that? Or salads freshly cut and packed. When you taste it, you'll be wanting to come back. So come check us out on number 2 Robinson Street, Uptown Scarborough, Tobago. We open on Saturday nights from 7:30 to 11:30 p.m. Monday to Thursday, we're open from 10 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. And on Friday, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Contact us at 772-7443 and all social media handles at The Rotisserie Factory.
Morning, good morning, What is
Yes, folks, we are back on the Minority Report this evening. A little bit of laughter and joy in the studio here this evening. You know, I think as we approach the Yuletide season, persons kind of get a little happier and so on. You know, and the general atmosphere is always a bit different.
Yes, the spirit of Christmas.
And you know that we've seen that happen from time immemorial, that the spirit of Christmas normally takes complete control. To many persons in Tobago, however, that is just a memory. Taking into consideration a lot of what we've been hearing, a lot of what we've been seeing. I mean, even yesterday, I had the very, very heartrending task of sitting and listening to a lady who would have visited the office and explaining a situation of a young lady who, I mean, I don't know when this is going to end. Persons who the contracts are not being renewed, they're being terminated, their situation, even persons have resorted in some instances to even going to secretaries and begging. Literally begging the secretary, who in their words displays extreme callousness and simply says, I can't do anything to help you.
Whatever happened to the bread and butter issues?
Where are the bread
What
and
is
butter
more bread
issues?
and butter than your employment? What is more bread and butter than getting a paycheck at the end of a fortnight or at the end of a month to take care of your families? What is more bread and butter than that?
These situations are increasing. It's getting worse.
And it is causing stress on individuals because going on leave after you would have been engaged, you would have had renewal of contracts.
Yes.
Over the years, some persons working 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, 20 years, 18 years. There's a legitimate expectation that when you go on leave, you will come back.
Out to
No, the precedent is that when you go on leave, wait for me to call you. It is not an automatic renewal. And you call when you recognize your time is coming to an end to return to work. You call. There seems to be no response. And you just eventually, but by right, Marlon, if you are not going to re-engage someone, they should know in advance.
Yeah.
You cannot wait until the end of my contract period after I would have gone on leave and preparing to return.
The day before I return.
To tell me that, or to send a letter to my home or wherever to say I'm no longer engaged.
Yeah, that's the favorite one.
How is that good industrial relation practice? How is that humane?
That's the thing.
How is that caring?
How is it even humane? Humaneness. And these are the persons who said, when the election is over, we will take off our political robes and put on the Tobago robes. And what we've seen since those Tobago robes went on was victimization.
Fear.
We've seen an attempt to instill fear in this public. We see there's a certain secretary or assistant secretary, I must say, that walks around the divisions with a book. A book, they said, and this is not from me. This isn't opinionative. This is information coming out of the divisions by whistleblowers, that they're walking around with a book and sitting in meetings, and when they open the book and they go through and they're asking about certain names of persons, there are persons who have said that they have witnessed names go to secretaries and they're on the secretary desk and the date of contract maturity is on the document.
So your jersey color, it has nothing to do with your performance, but your jersey color or your perceived, because nobody knows who I vote for when I go behind that ballot box. So the perceived perception that I support someone other than you determines whether or not I can have bread and butter, whether or not I can receive a paycheck in this administration.
Yeah.
And that is sad.
Yes.
That's a sad place to be as an island, as a government, as an executive. And Marlon, you were talking, I was speaking to someone very recently, And they were saying, Petal, I don't know what's going on, Anna. Before we used to be complaining about dust, and these were the words you used. Before we used to be complaining about the dust because of the projects that were ongoing on the island.
Yeah.
She said, right now I prefer the dust than to not have any dust on her. She said she drove from Scarborough to Crown Point and nothing is happening.
Wow.
And she is in a business where you will patronize if you have excess income.
So it's a luxury.
Yes? So persons like that are feeling the pinch.
Yeah. It is critical.
And one of the things she mentioned to me, she said, Petal, it trickles down, you know. Because when there are projects, contractors are engaged. When contractors are engaged, people are employed. When they are employed, they get a paycheck. When they get the paycheck, they spend that in the parlor, they spend that in the shop. They spend that here, they spend that there.
Yeah.
They could do their nails, they could do their hair, they could do... But when you don't have that excess cash, all you want to do is the necessary, you know.
Yeah.
Shelter and food.
Yeah. Not even clothing. You don't even want to spend on clothing.
Food is your priority.
You're hoping not to gain weight or lose. Yeah. Exactly.
And then when you have a situation where you don't know what is happening next month, you are going to conserve. You are going to save. You are going to spend on only what is necessary because you are planning for when you may not have. What is going to happen during that period. And this is where we have come to.
And I want to say this as well to the public. Let us not become caught up. Tobago was caught up already on December the 6th, 2021 by words and speed talking and flowery words and very vivid descriptions and quotes and sayings, the greatest little island on the planet, and it was all a nice show, and it got persons excited. And I would think that now I want to encourage us to learn from that dire mistake, and not just get caught up now in the excitement. And we heard the Chief Secretary come in the last sitting where he was supposed to present to Tobago what, now that we know what we are going to get, this is how we intend to spend it. That is what he was supposed to do. However, we saw the Chief Secretary come to bring a motion or to bring a statement that he is going to be suing the Minister of Finance for monies that he claimed to be owed. And interestingly enough, I was listening to a program last night on this said station, and one of the panelists explained the process, and he began the explanation by saying, clearly the Chief Secretary is out of his depth as a Secretary of Finance. He does not understand the process. He does not understand financial matters. He doesn't understand how this thing works. And he went on to explain that when the Minister of Finance reads his budget, it is tied to the projection of oil and gas prices. When that drops, then everything is affected. Every sector, every ministry has a shortfall. So to now say that based on what the Minister of Finance would have said, that you're holding him to this and that he owing you this now, it shows clearly a lack of understanding of how the process works. And we saw him come to the house, make a whole set of noise. He never said to Tobago, okay, I'm going to do this, we swing, but with the money what we have, in the meantime, this is what we intend to do with it. And to date, we've not
quantified. But more than that, when this issue would have arisen, I think it was early this year or late last year, the independent senator would have posed a similar question to the Minister of Finance. And as you would have explained, the Minister of Finance explained it in those words as to why the allocation that was approved, Tobago may not or would not have received the total sum of the appropriation. Further to that, what the Chief Secretary and this administration has not done is to report to the people on how they have utilized the funding that they would have received in the past 2 years. The Chief Secretary came in the first instance with a reallocation. Okay, was your first year. You said you want to calculate the figures yourselves. Okay, you were given an opportunity to do that. You came again in June. You did not report to the people on how you utilized the fund. You came again in October for the reallocation. You did not report, nor did you quantify how you want to use so you did not report again on how you would have utilized the allocation in the last year, the last fiscal period. Now you would have received an allocation for the fiscal coming 2024. You have not really specified what are your priorities and how you have quantified those priorities. You would have indicated in your presentation that the secretaries will then come and speak about their particular divisions in detail. Apart from the Secretary of Education, no other secretary said anything about what their priorities are, what it costs, and how they plan to execute. The Secretary of, or the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Health spoke immediately after the minority leader, and all she attempted to do was talk about autonomy. Not an iota. And health is such an important and critical division in the landscape of the island. And not one word about what your division did, how you're spending money that your division utilized in the last period, and what you intend to do going forward, and how you will utilize the resources going forward. Not a word.
And this is a secretary who was given a hospital and after 2 years has failed to operationalize it and has sat in various interviews saying that I wouldn't call that a hospital, I will call it a health facility. Whose fault is that?
But this is the same secretary who knew everything. And how to fix everything when they were on the outside.
This is shameful. This is shameful. And we keep, and again, we stress this because Tobago, we want you all to be aware of the voices. We want you all to be aware of the promises. We want you all to be aware and pay attention. Connect the dots. This administration continues. And as Minority Council, as you said, no other secretary spoke to anything that they would have done or intend to do with the money that they would have been allocated and would be allocated. So the question is still, what is this assembly, what is this administration doing with the allocation? How much thus far? $5+ billion? $5+ billion spent in 2 years. And what is there to show?
And you have 2 more to come.
You have 2 more budgets to come. What is there to show? We still have critical issues in education. We have a number of schools whose repairs are non-existent. We still have the Roxborough Hospital failing to be operationalized. We still have agriculture, who all we've heard is talk, this, we intend to do this, we intend to do that. The largest purchase of equipment, the largest this, but nothing is happening.
And Marilyn, the thing about it is, there are the numbers to show how the economy is being impacted. Because we are seeing that the overall economy has declined.
Consistently.
We are seeing the sectors are declining, or major sectors, construction, agriculture. We are seeing a reduction in terms of the numbers of persons engaged in the private sector.
Yes.
And I think the results are also showing an increase in the number of persons in the public sector.
Yes. An increase.
When you would have campaigned that, one, there were too many persons, and you would think that with a comment such as that, you will do something to assist the private sector, to help them to increase their capacity, to increase their profitability, so that they can engage more people. But we are seeing the reverse happening.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, what is the plan? What is the real plan to fix it? Because you came in under the promise that you would fix it. How do you intend to fix? And what was broken?
That is the question. What was broken? We can say that now several things are broken. As we speak this evening, there are several things now, Tobago, that have been broken, that were not broken prior to December the 6th, 2021. And this is what is passing for quote-unquote governance.
Governance is a continuum. And we understand that you want to build on the past. Governance is a continuum. And what you should be doing as an administration, you should have come in with a plan, first and foremost. So they plan to win the election, but it appears as if this administration did not plan to govern.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because there seemed to be no plan, and everything seems to be happening in isolation, in a haphazard type of manner, ad hoc way. And what we are seeing unfolding is as a result of lack of preparation for the job, lack of planning. When we were growing up, the old people said it.
Yeah.
Prior planning prevents plenty problems.
Yes. And well, I had it in a different way. My primary school teacher, I always say, proper planning prevents piss poor performance. They drilled that into us. So folks, we are getting ready to wrap up, but my final statement I want to make, Minority Councillor, before we close off this evening. In the days of the Roman Empire's rule, when the people began to experience hardship and the poverty and the general depression of the country, they started to murmur. And the Roman emperor said, let us give them wine. Let us give them entertainment, and they will not revolt. Tobago, it seems as if we are reliving.
Take notice.
Take notice. Let us give them wine. Let us give them entertainment, and they will not revolt. Be aware. I'm Marlon David saying good night from the Minority Report. Have a great evening.